gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this event. Talk with Sajith will be an interactive discussion with the leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, on his vision and mission for a better tomorrow. This event provides all of you an opportunity to directly engage with the Honorable Sajith Premadasa and team and to contribute your thoughts and views in helping shape the future of Sri Lanka. As we commence this event, I would like to call upon stage the organizer of this event, Mr. Lahiru Liyanage, to present the welcome speech.
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to welcome Honorable Sajith Premadasa, Madam Janani Premadasa, my dear friend Anuradha Wimalaratne, and Mr. Harin Fernando, and Dr. Mahim, and welcome all. The purpose of this gathering to support Samagi Jana Balawegaya and Honorable Sajith Premadasa and Anuradha Wimalaratne, who is contesting from Colombo district. As I mentioned on the invitation, talk is Sajith. It's your time to ask many questions you may have from Sajith and Anuradha, what their vision, what their plans to take our country to the next level. So sit back and we'll have a great evening, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Next in line, we have someone who was one of the youngest members in the Colombo Municipal Council and was elected as a Western Provincial Councillor in the year 2014. He was a student of Royal College Colombo and the Colombo British School. He has studied economics and political science at Temple University of Japan and Temple University of Philadelphia, USA. He is a young and an enthusiastic individual with a vision to change the future of the country for the better. He is also one of the youngest provincial councillors to represent the council in his year, and the first and only councillor to be elected from the Colombo East electorate ever. He is currently the main organizer for Colombo West for Samagi Jana Balawegaya, contesting for general elections 2020 from the Colombo district. He is none other than Honorable Anuradha Wimalaratne.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let me apologize for the delay, but that's not something we can help during these days, 12 more days to go in the election. So I apologize before I start to everyone on behalf of Mr. Sajith Premadasa. So, let me first welcome my leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, and Madam Janani Premadasa. It's a great honor to have you guys here. Then my dear friend and most probably the most popular leader after Mr. Sajith Premadasa, Mr. Harin Fernando. Then our nationalist candidate, one of my favorites, educated, thorough gentleman, Dr. Mahim Mendis. Welcome, sir. Then one of my most respected leaders, Mr. Bastian, the former Deputy Defense Minister during Mr. Jayawardana's era. Welcome, sir. Also, Lahiru Liyanage, who has been gracious enough to organize this superb event for us. And let me also welcome everyone else, my dear friends, family, and all the other honored guests who's gracing us with their presence today. So, I'm not a great speaker speaker when it comes to formal forum, so let me just dive in. I had a long speech prepared, but due to the lack of time, I'm going to skip things like, well, the three most important things that I actually want to maybe champion in Parliament, hopefully with your help. But even if not, three things that I really want to see change in this country. But I'm going to take the first two out. First one was going to be economic policy. I was going to talk about making right economic policies and maybe talk about some of the wrong economic policies that's been taken up today, and the rampant nepotism that's available. I think a good example would be the new Director General of Board of Investments that was appointed, who happens to be the nephew of the current First Lady, but I'm going to skip that. Then the second one I really wanted to talk about was something that I'm really passionate about, that I really think that should change in this country, which is our education system and the way that we look at education in this country. Because I remember 6 years ago, pre-Yahapalan era, we used to walk on the roads, protest, asking for, I think Dr. Mahim was one of the leading people there. We were asking for 6% from our GDP for our education. Because I believe the root cause of most of our socio-economic issues is how we have been looking at education for the past 40, 50 years, because we are totally outdated when it comes to that. So, I'm not going to go into any of that today. I don't think there will be good questions aimed at our Honorable Leader and Dr. Mahim and my friend Harin on those matters from all of you guys. The one thing that I'm going to talk about, at least take 5 minutes to talk about, is issues that's being faced by women and children today. For a lack of a better word, we are living in a disgusting time. All of you might be aware that there was a misunderstood post regarding sexual harassment connected to me or my supporters, which was a huge misunderstanding. But as soon as I found out, I made sure to contact that lady and offer her my fullest support. Because I do not believe, my supporter or not, there should be anyone in this country, especially in my neighborhood, that would harass a woman or a child. I'm a son of a very strong mother, most probably my strongest pillar. I'm a brother to a sister who's going to school that I love with all my heart. So I do not believe that there should be individuals that harass any woman or child should be left in our society. I'm not an advocate of capital punishment, but I believe when it comes to rape and harassment of children and drug dealers, let me add that as well, that is deserving of capital punishment. Don't get me wrong, I am a strong Buddhist who believes in the Buddhist ideals, but I also believe that women and children should be respected and protected in a society if we are supposed to have, or if we are to see the future we want to see in this country. So, regarding the story I was telling you, I'm not going to go into detail, but the police actually did their job. But unfortunately, the victim did not want to carry forward against the perpetrator. Police actually got him. It's an unfortunate situation. I was the one to go report it. But the laws in this country are so flawed. So I want to say this in front of you, that we need to change our laws protecting our women and our children in this country. Because it's a disgusting state, if I may say. Because nowadays, the police is helpless. And I know in this country there's a situation where most women do not want to come forward when they are harassed. I was actually happy that there was someone who was willing to come forward, but then unfortunately she backed off. Now the police cannot do anything about it. They can only hold the perpetrator for only 24 hours. This was a flashing incident. So now that perpetrator is out in public today because we don't have the laws to keep him in such a bad situation. Because if anyway, I'm sure most of you know, evolution of a rapist start by them becoming peeping toms in their adolescent ages. Next step is flashing. Third step is actual rape and sometimes murder. I wanted to talk about this because 24 hours ago and within 24 hours before that, 3 underage girls died or succumbed to their injuries due to rape. And this is the country that we are talking about. 2,500 years of strong Buddhist heritage. And these are the kind of things that are happening in this country. It has become taboo to talk about these things. But I believe no longer should it be. Because we have a strong leader who is not scared of facing taboos or facing issues that otherwise not talked about. This is the time for us to come forward. Because we know during the past regime, people like this were protected. They were brought into parliament. Some people actually had parties. We know of an incident where a Russian tourist was raped and her boyfriend, at that time I think a Red Cross officer, was murdered. And that was from the party or from the people that's trying to become the Prime Minister and the next, hopefully not, the parliamentarians and the cabinet of this country. We need to stop this. Harassment of women and children is a rampant issue in our society. Most people don't want to come forward because there is no support structure or protection. And we as a people, we always fail them. We talk against them. We talk against the victim when we should be actually making laws and going after the perpetrators. So we really need to change this. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you know this. 90% of the rape incidences in this country does not go to the police. And when it does, it takes almost 14 years for the perpetrators to face justice. And only 1% of that 10% ever gets charged or face judgment for their crimes. This system needs to change. We as a people, we need to start thinking differently. We need to become better people. Being educated, being smart, being rich counts for nothing if you've got no humanity. We need to change this, ladies and gentlemen. Women and children, sometimes children, male and female, did you know this? Gets harassed mentally, physically and sexually every day when they are on the roads, when they are in the public transport system. 90% of our mothers, of our sisters, and sometimes our little sons and daughters. It's time that we started looking at this country and looking at ourselves differently. And ladies and gentlemen, you get to choose coming August 5th between 2 camps. One, I don't want to go into. If you can think about pre-2015 era and how they have behaved and how they have behaved in the past 8.5 months, I think it's apparent. Your second choice is a young leader, a progressive thinker, someone who can actually deliver on his promises, someone who is not scared to stand up for what's right, a young leader, a leader who can take us to the next step in our country, not only financially, economically, but as a people with values, morals. So ladies and gentlemen, I invite you, first of all I thank you for being here and bearing with us today. And I invite you to ask some really, really good, hard questions. And maybe, sometimes, hopefully, get a promise on this public stage from, hopefully, my choice for the next Prime Minister of this country, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, and ask good questions. Let's make this a good and productive night. It's not about eating and drinking, ladies and gentlemen. That's there as well after the event. So, I won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much. Let's make this a good, worthwhile and productive event. Thank you so much.
I now request the panelists for tonight's event to come up on stage. Beginning with the moderator, Vidushan Premadasa. Honorable Sajith Premadasa, Honorable Anuradha Wimalaratne, Honorable Harin Fernando, Dr. Mahim Mendis, and Mr. Lahiru Liyanage.
So to commence this panel discussion, may I first ask our leader, Honorable Sajith Premadasa. Today was a very historical occasion for the party as it launched its main manifesto. So my question to you, sir, is quite brief. In a nutshell, could you explain, like we got a couple of key alternatives in terms of governance. Why would a professional would want to vote for the Samagi Jana Balawegaya? And also, as quoting a statement from Winston Churchill, what he mentioned was, never let a crisis go waste. So right now, the world faces a crisis, which has rippled down to Sri Lanka as well. So how would the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, once you are the Prime Minister, capitalize on it? Up to you, sir.
First and foremost, let me congratulate and thank the organizers for organizing this event and for providing me with an opportunity of responding to issues that are important to our nation. And I would also like to apologize for the delay that took place. This is all part and parcel of the political hustings, and as you know very well, punctuality is not the norm that is followed when you have a series of political meetings. Samagi Jana Balawegaya is an alliance and a political movement that was formulated to be the pioneer in providing solutions to the issues that the citizens of Sri Lanka face today. We are proud to be known as problem solvers, and also we have a dream that will ultimately result in the promotion of unity, prosperity, well-being of all citizens of our country. The unique which we will govern the country. Myself and Honorable Harin Fernando, who's here today, we have seen firsthand the functioning of government as members of the cabinet. And having had experience being an intern in the United States Senate under Senator Lahiru of South Dakota, and having had access to the institutions of government in the United Kingdom, I'm sorry to say that the manner in which governance takes place in our country, the methodologies that are adopted to arrive at policy decisions, the manner in which the decision-making processes and the policy implementation processes take place, I must say it's very, very unprofessional, unscientific, highly ad hoc, and on most occasions dictated by personal inclinations and personal interests. I believe Samagi Jana Balawegaya will provide the country with solutions that we have arrived at through thorough discussion, adequate policy debate, having gone through a process of cost-benefit analysis, and basically focusing ourselves on achieving our national objectives. We as a political alliance is single-mindedly focused on achieving our national interest. National interest encompasses various aspects: economic, political, security, defense, humanitarian, societal, and so on and so forth. So I believe Samagi Jana Balawegaya possesses the requisite personnel in terms of pioneering and implementing our political program, the development agenda, and we also possess personnel of high acumen and capabilities, those who will add value to our country, those who will become practitioners of governance with a wholehearted purpose. And I'm very confident that we have a team that can perform, we have a team that can achieve results, and we have a team that will achieve results according to a pre-planned timetable. So overall, I believe we are totally different from the traditional, archaic political parties that you see in the present political field. And you all know that we are undergoing a process of serious democratic competition in order to elect the most suitable 225 to the legislature, which is the parliament. And we are very confident and we are very reassured by the reaction of the people in terms of what we stand for and in terms of
delay, especially in the public sector. So in terms of a reform perspective, what can you actually propose in that respect? And also just briefly touch upon the media freedom. I think that's something that you have looked at in the past on looking at state regulation versus self-regulation. Could you just briefly explain on that, please?
Well, on the first one, I believe very, very clearly that there had been all types of interference in the due process of law. And it is not in the interest of good governance, especially in a country like Sri Lanka, that this type of interference continues. And the instruments, the institutions that we have need to be greatly strengthened, and the right people need to be there. And also much training has to be done. I can remember that there was the USAID program in training those of the Bribery and Corruption Commission. I was also involved as a USAID National Consultant 2018 in this process. We saw that apart from some of the senior officers, the others need tremendous training. So that needs to continue. So those instruments strengthen, and as I said, interference in the due process of law should be ended. As for the second matter, which is self-regulation of the media, I believe Samagi Jana Balawegaya, the leadership, very firmly believes that it is not for the government on behalf of the state to control the media. We need to strengthen the culture of professionalism in media by further training journalists, and also the newspaper and other institutions need to take enormous interest in the well-being and training of journalists to regulate themselves, and also the type of people who are recruited into the ranks of journalists is something that media institutions need to be concerned more about. So self-regulation, not government control, as in the case of the Press Council of Sri Lanka, which came to be during the Samagi Jana Balawegaya government a long time back. That was a government-dominated press council. The government heard this case and passed judgment on journalists. And whereas during the UNF government, we had made changes with the Press Complaints Commission coming into existence, with the Editors Guild, the Publishers Association, and Editors Guild, the Publishers Association, taking a and the Free Media Movement, taking control of the Press Complaints Commission. So their members were involved in the decision making and the board of the Press Complaints Commission. That needs to be strengthened. Very unfortunately, during the Rajapaksa regime, the Press Complaints Commission, while it was making good progress, they again introduced the Press Council, which was to their satisfaction. And they are not, unfortunately, the present regime is not quite interested in a self-regulated media. So we need this change of government. Samagi Jana Balawegaya is extremely committed to self-regulation, and all what is needed for an independent and a vibrant media will be done under a future administration of Samagi Jana Balawegaya. That's what I say.
Thank you. So I would like to now open the floor for any questions. There are a few mics that are circulating. circulating. Can the ushers raise their hands, please? The ones with the mics. Yes, so if there's any questions, you can go on. So I will firstly put forward the question that was said to be addressed to the leader. Sir, what is your strategy for encouraging support of startup companies in Sri Lanka? And the sub-question will be, what is your approach for tax policy for such investments into businesses?
We as a political board firmly believe the importance of small and medium-sized enterprises and the pivotal role that it plays in the wealth-creating mechanism of the country. As such, we will provide the maximum amount of support in terms of state support and state intervention policies that will encourage and induce the creation of new businesses, and we will adopt various support programs in terms of manipulating the tax instrument, the fiscal instrument, as far as government policy is concerned. So we will, of course, in several ways try to promote business startups. In terms of taxation, we will always encourage new businesses to start up, and we will have lenient tax policies in the beginning, so that these businesses have an opportunity to accumulate profits, and that will ensure that they will be encouraged to expand. So first and foremost, we will have leniency in terms of implementation of tax policy. Second, I think one of the most important aspects of creating more and more small businesses is access to affordable capital. We will ensure that financial institutions will be set up specifically for the provision of low-cost capital for the business startups. And this will encourage these businesses to utilize these funds and resources at low cost. And this will enable and encourage them to move on in the ladder of prosperity. So the first thing we will do is we would use the fiscal instrument of taxation, provide tax relief, and provide a decent interval for the businesses to grow. Second would be access to low-cost capital. In terms of these investors having access to a pool of funds at least cost, which would encourage them to set up more and more businesses. Third would be access to technology. We as a government would encourage these new startups to have access to local and foreign technology. We as government will encourage that process and try to facilitate it by funding exchange programs, promoting Sri Lankan businesses abroad, and encouraging pioneers of new technology to have links with our businesses. which usually hinders and discourages people to come into the business processes. The approval processes will be streamlined. One-stop shops will be established to provide quick solutions for the multifarious problems that the business startups may face. So those would be some of the major avenues through which we would encourage businesses. Just to summarize, access to capital, access to new technology, utilize the fiscal instrument to provide tax relief for infant businesses and infant industries. And last but not least, we would also encourage these businesses to have access to technology and also have a very aggressive policy of trying to reach out to overseas markets. We will encourage the businesses to penetrate the various international markets that are in existence, and we will provide them with the fullest support. And we will be very, very proactive in supporting the small business field.
I would quickly like to bring Anuradha into this discussion as well. Now, in terms of a startup, I think accelerators, incubators are a critical part of it as well. And also education into STEM subjects, which is paramount at this juncture, as we want to build a more skilled workforce, as a result, drawing more FDI. So in terms of, since we're looking at education a bit more than the other areas, I would say, what sort of policies or what sort of scope do you see in that aspect?
Thank you, Vidushan. Such a broad question, but I have like a long-winded answer. But since we don't have the time, I think, as I said before, we need to start spending more on our education, but not just spending. We need to spend smarter, and we need to start looking at education from out of the conventional way that we have been seeing. Like as you said, we need to start encouraging our people, and we need to bring our education to a level that's different from our past, where everyone is expected by their parents to become doctors, lawyers, engineers. But now we need to come up with an education plan that's at least 20 years long, that we can look at the future job markets and have a skilled workforce. Even if we have to send them abroad, as I had told you before, to be able to face the future and face the jobs that we are going to create. See, I think this is something that we need to do before creating jobs. And along with that, we need to start thinking in technology and access to technology. Like I think Harin was trying to do that. He tried a lot to bring in Wi-Fi into the country and give tabs to children. Unfortunately, most of the leaders of that time did not have the vision that my friend Harin had. But we're starting to see the effects of it, aren't we? Because now we have come to this online studying and because of the COVID situation. But I think only 40% of the children today has access to a smartphone. Or, their parents doesn't even have it. So something we should have done so that we can have a strong, skilled workforce. And since we opened up on the subject of education, I think we need to start looking into morality, or putting values into our children rather than breeding them to be better than the next person. I think our education has a way of, the whole system has a way of driving the humanity out of our children. we see how some of the most educated, or the so-called educated people are behaving today in this country. So I think we need to look at that as well strongly. And something like I'm really passionate about. I'm not going to go into that because I'm expecting a question on that to come from the audience, hopefully. It's university ragging, which is a huge problem. Because, yes, I believe free education is important, but freedom of education is even more important. Because we are losing such a huge percentage of our youth because we do not have the ability to cater to people that's actually falling out of the system. Because we think about only 10% of the students that face A-level and advanced level exams actually get to go to university. And some of our educated people, and even politicians, they give you pressure groups. Some political parties are part and parcel of that. They are against private universities. I'm not. I believe there should be more universities, not less. And not only from a financial point, to stop all the foreign currency going out of this country. And, to get more currency coming in, for example, Monash University in Colombo, I think, Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. That was a project that should have come over here, but our people went against it. I believe in private education. I believe there should be private medical universities. There's nothing wrong with giving people that ability, that space. So to finish off, I think we need to think of education in a different way. It's not only about academics. It's about who you are as a person, who you are as a human being, and who you are as a citizen. Because nowadays we have a lot of educated people who does not want to get involved in social issues. We have a lot of educated, smart people who doesn't want to touch politics because it's too much of a hassle. So they can live a better life. So can I. I think all of us can, like everyone over here can. They don't really have to be here, but it's good. I'm happy that they're here. Because if I may quote an Irish philosopher and statesman, Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So I think we need to add humanity into our education and have a different vision and a longer plan. I hope that's enough.
Thank you, Anuradha. I think Harin needs to add a bit to it as well.
First and foremost, thank you for having me. Well, let me put it this way. We have 600,000 students take for O-levels, ordinary levels in Sri Lanka. How many goes through to advanced levels of 200,000? And how many gets into the Sri Lankan universities are only less than 25,000? So where is the problem? So we have so much of fallouts from 600,000 to 200,000 doing A-levels. So that's the age of 16. This is where we're creating an issue, a youth uprising in Sri Lanka. So therefore, what we were trying to do at the last round, did a fantastic initiative, having 13 years of education compulsory, and that needed lots of money. So what we were thinking was, let's say, hypothetically, how many friends do we have from our government schools who could pass ordinary maths and they fail and they're not qualified to do A-levels, but they're brilliant students in a different way. So what the last government started the initiative was to make sure that they have technical subjects to move into, as we know abroad, plumbers, carpenters, they're professionally qualified. Once they come out at 18, they have a paper qualification. That's the start. We still make so much of money to Sri Lanka from foreign places, but we are not saving skilled labor, as in the unskilled labor. So this was the fact that we were planning, and also on education. I wanted an initiative to start coding at the grade 8 level for students. So that's why we had an initiative wanting to do tablets. And one thing the COVID has done well is even students from Mahim studies from Zoom, and that's why they're amazing. I'm I'm silent and very happy because there is internet penetration. When I became the digital minister, somebody asked me what did digital mean for my first function. To be brutally honest, I didn't know. And I myself had to educate myself what was digital at all. Read the Madaseka dictionary because I had to hold my hand and explain what digital was. It was numbers. How could I say it's numbers? But it said something very, very simple and strategic in the Madaseka single translation. It said, Anti-Valinka. I was a bit upset that I didn't get harassed in Parliament saying there are the fingers listed, but anyways, it was pretty good because I realized you can get your entire world up to your fingertips. That's what digital meant. With its banking, with its health, with its education, anything that you want, now we operate from this. So that's digitalization for you. And I believe also Sri Lanka is getting more invest on digital education. And we are a student, Rampal student, a Anuradha student, can get the same teaching that a Royal College top-end teacher is tutoring. So that's pretty easy. And if we look at that direction, one thing that you have to do is you have to build the infrastructure, right? So that's why Sri Lanka currently is fiber optic enabled up to Java. And we have built the underground highway. There are no vehicles to go on the highway, as in products to go on the highway. Where you can have e-learning, you can have so many platforms. And I think that's a start. I think we would want to do from where we stopped. I became a joke of being called for Google Balloon, saying Harin the balloon. But I think that would be a fantastic initiative. Kenya just tested fast, but unfortunately, politicking and tricking as well just completely killed the whole moment. But I'm sure a learned man and a young, positive thinking Prime Minister would definitely understand the value of digitalization and education moving to a new era. So that's why this has been this right time.
This question is to Honorable Sajith Premadasa, taking along points that Dr. Mahim and Anuradha pointed out, we need to implement governance. And then Anuradha very rightly said that sometimes the government falls into the pressure groups. How is the SJP going to balance this? And how do they have a roadmap to practically implement certain ideas that they have to, help in paving the way for governance?
You want to know how we will respond to pressure groups, right?
Yes, while also allowing the way for governance.
So basically what you're trying to insinuate is how we will not be influenced by the powerful. Well, all I can say is that the way we will behave and act in government will be transparent. We will have a very strict disciplinary codes which our members will have to adhere to. And on a medium and long-term basis, I think if you are to eradicate corruption in government, one of the major steps that we have to take is far-reaching reforms in campaign finance. Financing campaigns, if you just observe the amounts that are expended on electioneering and campaigning, and if one examines as the sources of those funds, you inevitably see a cycle of persistent corruption. It's a vicious cycle that is there and it is here right now. We have a lot of ill-gotten wealth that has been utilized in this purely to ensure that they have a fat treasury in terms of the party treasury, which would then enable them to flood the market, the media market, with so much of marketing programs, advertisements, and so on and so forth. And those play a very, very crucial role in forming opinions among the people. So, if we are to talk of good governance, the very first thing that comes to my mind is far-reaching campaign finance reforms, which will limit individual contributions and corporate contributions to various campaigns. That is of utmost importance. Second is we have to ensure that when it comes to the procedures in terms of awarding contracts, government contracts, and avenues through which various institutions participate in the government investment processes, that we have extreme transparency, because as you may know by now, you can even manipulate the present tender procedures. That's a given. We all talk of having competitive procedures when it comes to awarding contracts, but there are grave inadequacies and shortcomings in the present process, so we'll have to tighten it up. And I also believe that the procedures that we adopt to awarding these contracts should be very much open to public, and we should allow members of civil society the opportunity of scrutinizing prior to the final award, and have structures and procedures with adequate checks and balances, which enables that a level playing field exists for all those who want to participate in the tender process. So we will have the highest standards established when it comes to governance, and of course the guidance and the direction has to come from the top, and you have to lead from the front, and I hope to do that and try to become a role model which others will have to follow if they are to remain in government with myself being as the head.
Can we take another question from the audience? Yes.
Thank you. Good sir, Mr. Premadasa. Recently, His Excellency President Anuradha Wimalaratne said that he doesn't want the Parliament and also the judiciary to have an obstruction to his programs and his work. Already he has made several.
Sorry, I don't understand. Can you please clarify?
Now recently, Honorable Excellency the President publicly said that he doesn't want the judiciary and the Parliament statutory to make an obstruction to his role. And he doesn't want to see them any. Already he has initiated so many press presidential task force which covers various ministerial subjects and portfolios where the president is not empowered. In fact, to my understanding, even the defense ministry he's not supposed to have it. He's only an executive. So, the next parliament, how, because apparently now so many military personnel have been engaged in areas like culture and social empowerment, various subjects where the parliament, the ministries are normally held, those subjects. So, next parliament, how are you going to face this situation where the president is ordering various things where the subject matters should be under the ministers? So, how are you going to face that situation in the next parliament? Thank you.
Well, we have a tripartite system of government. That means we have three major institutions: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And that's part and parcel of the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, which no individual can violate. So the tripartite system of government, as it is stated in the Constitution, has to be abided by. And whatever the personal opinions and tendencies and proclivities of any individual, I think they are secondary, whereas the primacy of the country constitution is very well accepted and is something that will be maintained. So the issue of a particular branch of government, as you say, the executive, trying to decide whether the legislature or the judiciary should and ought to be an integral part of government. That's not for any individual to decide. It's already clearly stated in the Constitution, and the Constitution shall prevail over and above the individual intentions or individual thinking of any particular person. So we will have the tripartite system of government, and we will have a functioning judiciary, an independent judiciary, and we will have a transparent legislature, which will strive to work with the executive. And we will not have any log jams, which will be to the detriment of the country. You won't have personal, egotistical contests between the legislature and the executive. That is not the nation's interest. But we will have opportunities to work together, to be very productive and constructive in moving the national development agenda. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. Establishment of presidential task forces per se is not something that should be objected to. If they are formulated to serve a particular purpose, which is otherwise not addressed in an efficient manner. Let me give you an example. If the roles had been reversed at the November 16th election, I would have had several task forces, especially in promoting women's development, environmental protection,
and English trainer. And I have had the privilege of working in quite a few districts in the country. Now, we often talk about the need of increasing English proficiency of students. But something that I have noticed is it's not just the students, but the English teachers themselves who need help in improving their language proficiency. Even I sometimes need a little bit of help to understand the sophistication of your vocabulary, which is amazing. But how do we help our teachers to at least be able to understand the majority of what is discussed on a global or even a national level?
My honest opinion, as far as achieving high standards in English linguistic skills, I personally feel that we have to use all resources available to us to ensure that every citizen of this country is given the opportunity of reaching levels of excellence in terms of English linguistic skills. As such, I have proposed the setting up of centers of excellence in all of the divisional secretariat areas, numbering 332 in our country. These centers of excellence will not only be institutes that will impart English linguistic skills that are of international standard, but we will also combine education in terms of new technology, information technology, computer literacy, and the major themes that are prevailing in the international arena when it comes to skills. So in terms of skills development, I think it's good to learn some lessons from the various educational institutes that are set up in India, where I believe in all the states of India, they have Indian Institutes of Management, IIMs, and Indian Institutes of Technology, IITs. And I believe the methodology that they adopt to impart knowledge is the English stream. I would love to set up these centers of excellence and to ensure that English linguistic skills that are of international standard, that knowledge is imparted to the youth, to the kids, and to the citizens of our motherland. And with such a process, we will also create people of skills, especially English skills, which will enable them to compete in the international labor market when it comes to job opportunities. I may just tell you a personal story with regard to my late father. Now, he was not fluent in English at all, right at the inception of his political career. But he was an ardent fan of the Parliamentary Library. And it was he who told me once that he made it a point to learn 10 new words per day. And I hope all of you may have seen the recent revelation through Facebook, whereby a video came out where he answered questions at the United Nations. We had 4 professional journalists, including Sri Lanka, who was probing and interrogating and questioning. And I think he was basically on par with Oxford, Cambridge English when it came to his replies. So that was all self-learning, not necessarily university education or higher education as such. So, well, there's a will, there's a way. If one has access to a thesaurus or a dictionary, one can follow the Premadasa way and enhance one's standard of English. And I, for one, have always tried to do so. And I know there was a bit of a shirt in you when you mentioned about English with reference to Sajith Premadasa. The basic reason why I made some tweets, where I formulated some tweets, was the fact that there are some similarities in society where they question my ability to speak English. So I wanted to put the record straight, and I don't need to sound arrogant. I'm very much in favor of having the political hierarchy that is completing these days, including the present Prime Minister and the ex-Prime Minister, to come for an open debate with me in English and let the people judge about the relevant skills and capabilities of those who are aspiring to lead the country.
Dr. Mahim, can I bring you in as well? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this particular question as well, being an eminent educationist yourself.
Well, there needs to be very clearly a system that will enable our children to learn English from their very, very early childhood period. What is happening now is inadequate and certainly creating a problem because they are not encouraged to learn English in the way they should from the very early childhood. So some of the reforms that came to be planned out during the past regime. I was a member of the National Institute of Education Reforms team, primary education reforms. We were very, very keen that English be taught properly from grade 1. And that, of course, there was criticism, on these reforms. But that is because of the fear that we haven't got well-trained people to engage in this matter. So there is also inadequacy, as a member of the audience rightly pointed out. Inadequate trainers. We need to have a proper training program for teachers of English, and that is, I believe, joint action on the part of English departments in the universities, and also we need to strengthen the capacities of the National Institute of Education. They haven't got the resources meant for this purpose. So, what I can say in brief is English education is not magic, and our children are lagging behind because they are not taught English. They know everything, but not English. Simply because they are not taught English from their early childhood. So that has to be taken very seriously, and we will take it very, very seriously if there is an stability.
I will now take the question that was sent to me. It's to the Honorable Leader. What is your strategy on facing such an unexpected situation such as this in terms of addressing questions of security, employment, health, and the imminent poverty situation in this country?
Well, first and foremost, I would not engage in implementing insane policies. Right at the inception of this administration, I think there was a major mistake that was committed. That is, they enacted policies that that resulted in government revenue, loss of government revenue amounting to 700 billion Sri Lankan rupees. Now, I am all for tax cuts. I think taxes are an inhibition to entrepreneurship, and I personally feel that taxes should be held at the lowest possible levels. However, I think the government went on a tax cut binge, which resulted in the government marginalizing itself and minimizing the options available when it comes to fiscal policy. The loss of revenue amounting to 700 billion Sri Lankan rupees at one go is unheard of. The economically prudent manner in which those tax cuts should have taken place should have been in a gradual manner, where you have a particular percentage of tax cuts taking place, and after that you go through an analysis and an examination of the actual revenues and expenditures of government, done a study of it, and then you go on to the next stage of tax cuts. The government did not follow that particular program. They gave a huge tax cut which resulted in loss of government revenue, which basically pushed ourselves into a dark corner, and we were left with minimal fiscal options when this COVID-19 crisis came about. If I may say so, the government did not take serious note of the warnings that were expressed, especially by myself our country, no matter what happened in the international arena, the government was totally focused on the parliamentary election and trying to obtain a 2/3 majority. They did not give due recognition to the serious challenges that COVID-19 was posing. Now, having said that, I have to say, you mentioned 3-4 areas: the arena of security, health, employment, and poverty. I think in all those 4 aspects, we have become highly vulnerable. Now, what's the solution? The solution, as I believe, is we have to take all efforts to resuscitate the economy. Let me go back in history for a moment. The world did undergo an economic depression. It was called the Great Economic Depression, which spanned from 1929 to 1933. In fact, the economic depression caused by COVID-19 has gone beyond the damage caused during the late 20s and the late 80s, lead to a boost in the economy. This is exactly the policy that was followed by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, in the 1930s. I'm sure you are all aware of the New Deal program that he promulgated, and it was very successful in terms of overcoming the economic disasters created by the Great Depression. So right now we are facing repercussions from an economic depression that goes far beyond the consequences of the 1930s depression. But there is general consensus among the economic experts that we need to boost the economy, we need to inject the economy with adequate financial resources, which will in turn lead to an upward trend in the local economy. So, if you are to speak in specific terms, in terms of economic theory, it's the John Maynard Keynes' theory of aggregate demand management. You boost consumption, you boost investment, you boost savings. There's an automatic upscale rise in the economy. So, when you inject the economy with financial resources, as the US is doing, as UK is doing, as Bangladesh is doing, and so is India, you will put money in the hands of the people. So when you put money in the hands of the people, people will consume, they will invest, and they will also save. The 3 major components which will boost the economy. So it's simple economic theory, which our government does not seem to understand. You have President Trump, who is having a continuous and persistent fight with his political opponents, the Democrats. So we have the continuous fighting between the Republicans and the Democrats, but when it came to the economic crisis, even 2 persons who are in extreme polar positions like Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, they got together, the Democrats and Republicans got together, and they passed the fiscal stimulus package amounting to $2.3 trillion US. Monies were sent by mail through checks, and that's what was implemented in the US. What happened in UK? You had the British finance minister, who was known as the Chancellor of the Exchange, 100% of the salaries of all those in the private sector. India has implemented an income-specific program to boost the economy, helping the poor and the downtrodden in society. So when all this is happening in most of the countries impacted by the COVID-19, what does the Sri Lankan government do? They expend with 2 stocks of 5,000 rupees per family. And unfortunately, the process which you have to go through to obtain those funds, the costs are over and above the 10,000 that you receive, because you have to go through the whole rigmarole of going and begging the politicos. You have basically kneel down at their feet and start begging. The typically slavish system that we have in place in terms of redistribution of subsidies, the distribution of subsidies in our country, the typical slavish mechanism and machinery that we have in our country. For a family, a household to obtain the 2 stocks of 5,000 rupees stipends, you have to expend more than the 10,000 to achieve your entitlement. Sri Lanka needs a very proactive and a very surgical stimulus package if we are to come out of this vicious cycle. Please do understand that 2 things. UNICEF have done a study recently, and they have ascertained that 30% of our population do not have adequate food. So 30% of our population lack food security. And one need not explain the consequences of lack of food security. It will lead to malnutrition. It will lead to a retardation of national production, because the productive capacity of the individual will recede, and through low intake of food, it will also have an impact on your brain functions and your cognitive abilities. So it's a vicious cycle, and we have to do something very proactive, and we have to do something bold in order to reverse the process and ensure that there is an upswing in our economy, because right now our economy is in a grave crisis. Not a great crisis, a grave crisis. And it's a grave crisis of massive proportions. If we don't make a turn, you will have a cataclysmic effect of, just complete fall down of the economy. All the major macroeconomic indicators going into the negative, and you will be on a slippery slope towards economic Armageddon, right? So that is why I have proposed a stimulus package to be channeled through the less fortunate in our society. And I see a lot of pundits are questioning the practicality and the authenticity of the 20,000 monthly stipend that I have proposed for, not for all, not for the billionaires, not for the millionaires, but for until time eternity. It is only up until we get an economic upturn. And I can't for the world understand why they are questioning this aspect, because everywhere around the world, countries and economies badly impacted by COVID-19 have adopted this Keynesian fiscal stimulus program. And it's only in Sri Lanka that we are just letting everything go on as it is, without any direction, without any leadership, and without proper comprehension of economics. This government basically does not understand basic economics. And if you are to run a country, and if you are to run a government, one must have the basic understanding of the fundamentals of economics. And I'm sorry to say that the so-called Viyat aspect of this government has all of a sudden, the Viyat aspect has evaporated. I don't know where the Viyat aspect is taken, but I don't know who the economists are who are advising this government. Basically, this government does not know its economics, nor do they have the requisite personnel to advise them on economics. Of course, they have one capability, and that capability is when one proposes economic programs, such as what I have done, they have the capability of utilizing their ill-gotten wealth to fund troll funds, both domestic and abroad, and manipulate the media through cut and paste news stories. Right? That's what I call it. That's the cut and paste media. Not all, just certain aspects of our media. I call them cut and paste because they cut the story and paste what they want to achieve in order to promote their own personal political agendas. So you have troll farms with thousands and thousands of computers and youth who are being paid to comment, make statements that are artificially engineered to create this impression that this particular fiscal stimulus package which I propose is some ludicrous program. Not so. I think the government is preposterous in their actions. I mean, God help our country.
So thank you very much. Firstly, thank the Honourable Leader as well as eminent panellists for sparing their precious time, especially during an election time period, to attend this forum, and also wish the leader, Mr. Anuradha Wimalaratne, Mr. Harin Fernando, a successful tenure in the next parliament, and hope there'll be very prudent and profound lawmakers in the next years to come as well. So thank you very much. Dinner is served outside. May I invite the audience to please serve dinner. You can have it here and enjoy the rest.